Football's almost upon us, so we're previewing the offense. And as an homage to old dearly departed Jay Johnson, we've put very little thought or effort into it. You're listening to Can't Read, Can't Write. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Can't Read, Can't Write, the podcast that proves Spartans can talk. I'm Mike Jones, joined as always by the guy who was caught on his phone following MSU basketball exhibition play during his mother's birthday celebration. Kevin, how dare you, Greg? How are you doing, buddy?
Well, Michael, in my defense, if I were to put forward just one defense for myself, I was very bored at my mother's birthday celebration event. So
Karen catching strays.
It's not her fault it was dull, but it was so dull. No, it was actually lovely. We went to the Henry Ford Museum, which a lot of stuff there doesn't meet my standard for being in a museum, if I'm being honest. But then there is a lot of cool stuff there as well. So anyway,
it's like they had the square footage and had to fill it.
It felt like that. Yes. It felt like a lot of stuff was just like, Henry Ford was eccentric and rich, so he bought these things. We have them now. Look at it.
Right.
A lot of it felt that way.
Well, lovely. Congrats. Happy birthday, Karen. And dear listener, we want you to please comment on the YouTube video wishing Karen a very happy birthday. It would make her week. But of course, we want to thank you all for listening. And if we could ask a small favor, please share the pod with Spartans for Life. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. And as mentioned, you can follow us on YouTube at Spartan_Pod. Want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, same handle at Spartan_Pod. Greg, what are we doing this week other than previewing the offense?
I will just note, to stir up more engagement on YouTube, if you don't want to wish her a happy birthday, you can thank her for being responsible for bringing me into the world. So like whatever message you want to put there, we'll make sure she sees it. Anyway, we're going to start behind the green wall where, as we said in the preview, it's time for the offense. It's time to see what's happening in offense. Did you know, Mike Jones, and I think at times we might have forgotten about this last year, there's a whole side of the ball in football that's meant to advance and score the ball. Again, I think at times last year we kind of forgot that existed, but it is there. The unit is different now, and we're going to talk about those differences. Then we are going to go, if I can get my cursor here, we're going to talk about the MSU Hoops game, aforementioned. We're also going to talk about women's soccer, and then we're going to go off Grand River. There's a couple things going on, both in the NCAA and related to unpleasantness from last season.
So offense isn't the only thing that we're going to talk about that was unpleasant last season.
There's plenty of unpleasantness to go around, including in the Twitter questions, which will conclude the show.
Wonderful. And next week, Kevin Grech is already diving into FAU, churning the stats, cutting up the tape. So it is going to be a top-notch preview coming to us next week.
It's going to be really good. Stay tuned.
All right, let's head behind the green wall and let's preview some offense. Kevin, so there's people who catch the ball, there's people who run the ball, there's people who block, there's people who throw. Which one of these people or peoples do you want to talk about first?
Well, they say in football that all of the credit goes to the glamorous positions, the throwers, the catches, the runners. But it's the big uglies, the guys that you compare to herd animals or like whatever cow related thing you want to do. That is really what stirs the drink on offense. And last year,
up front,
it was bad. So probably a good, if the whole game starts up front, maybe our preview should start up front as well. Just some updates. Departures from the program. Mr. Nick Sambak is off to the Ravens. We're happy for him. Good for him. J.D. Duplain is horsing it up with the Michigan Panthers, although he's not on their roster, but he did sign, as my understanding. And then there are some people that are dead to you. So take these names and delete them from your brain. Ethan Boyd, Gino Vandemark, Spencer Brown, dead, gone. No one cares about them anymore.
Can we make fun of Sheehan for a second? So Sheehan routinely talks about having the Locked On Spartans curse. So he had an episode where he was talking about Ethan Boyd had transferred to Colorado and then left Colorado to go to Utah State. And he was saying, look, that's a couple terrible programs. He was at like culturally terrible programs. Dude at one point in time seemed to have retired from football. Like, he wished him, like, sincerely, I hope he finds love in the game again and has some fun at Utah State. It was just announced that Ethan Boyd is back in Michigan and is no longer playing football. So
yeah. We've sent, is it just Ethan Boyd, or did we send someone else to Colorado who also decided to retire from football? I think it was just Ethan Boyd.
No. I think there was a 4-star offensive line recruit out of Colorado, or maybe 3-star. Peyton Stewart, maybe? No. Peyton Stewart's on the team. I forget. Doesn't matter.
Multiple transfers, it seems, have just simply retired from the sport after what happened to them last year. And can they be entirely blamed? That's up for debate. Anyway, there are still some guys on the team from last year. So let's remember, harden your brain, fold it around these names. Brandon Baldwin, redshirt senior, probably be your left tackle. Ashton Lepo, redshirt sophomore, likely to be tackle. Played in like 12 games last year. Stanton Ramil, redshirt freshman. He was a big recruit at the time, Under Armour All-American, 4-star. He early enrolled last year and then was greatly injured. He's kind of lost like a whole year of development, even though he got the red shirt. So this will be his first year. We don't really know what to expect from him. I don't think he even played in the spring. So expect him to contribute at tackle, I think, to the extent that he contributes much at all. And then Gavin Brocious, redshirt sophomore, played in the spring, also likely to be, I think they have him penciled in at guard.
It's going to be him or Christian Big Dooley Phillips, I believe, are fighting for that spot. The left guard, I think left guard.
Sounds right. So those are some names to keep in mind, to kind of keep in your brain mass. And then there's transfers in as well. The big headline, of course, is Tanner Miller, 6-year senior, transferred in from Oregon State, followed the staff here. Second team All-American. I think he was Pac-12 first team as well. He figures to be our center this year, to the extent that hopefully he can remain. Now that he's here, he's probably just going to be injured half of the season, if I know anything.
I'm knocking on wood.
So that's the big headline for the transfers in. We're also adding in Luke Newman, 5th-year senior, but he's coming up from FCS Holy Cross, where he was an All-American. So those are kind of the big names. We've gone through all of them. What have you heard, Jonesy, about the offensive line from the coaching staff? We've got, of course, a whole new staff as well. Coach Michivik, Mahalchik, whatever, very well regarded in his profession. What are you expecting from this position group?
Ooh, what am I expecting? I'll say this: Mahalchik doesn't. If he's got something, he's not letting it on, I guess is what I'll say. I think it's, and I guess even if he was saying something, right, we've been so snake bitten as fans, and it's not just under Mel Tucker, right? Like ever since Jack Conklin left here, it's been trash. No one has meaningfully developed. So Um, I have zero expectations of this line. I will say that as much as there's a much to be frustrated with the previous staff, some of the folks that they did bring in on the offensive line, there's reasons to be excited about. Offensive tackle, we're lacking some depth. So you bring up Stanton Ramel, right? Like that's a dude who's probably gonna play this year.
Yeah.
Because one of the two tackles will likely get hurt, and he's first man in. We know Luke Newman. Luke Newman's actually, for those who don't know, is a really great story. Grew up a huge Michigan State fan, went to all of D'Antonio's camps. From a growth perspective, you know, he was, I think, like 6'4", 250, and like so just didn't have the body coming out of high school for that, and went to Holy Cross and then took a stab at in his grad transfer year of playing, you know, Power 4 football. He appears pretty soundly that he'll be our starting, and forgive me, it's right or left guard. Like he's locked in at that spot. So, you know, we've got two dudes who in Miller and Newman who have proven track record. It's not as if FCS teams don't play Power 4 teams. They regularly do, and
Right.
Newman has played against Power 4 competition. I think he was asked specifically about that. Sort of to make it a bit of an analogy, you know, Tyson Walker could talk about how the moment he knew that he could play up, right? You know, Newman has faced.
It was actually when he was listening to this podcast and we were begging him on our knees to shoot more threes his first year in the program.
Yeah.
He was listening in and he was like, I think they believe in me. And we were like, this is to you right now. Listen to us. Shoot more threes. And he was like, I guess maybe I should shoot more threes. And he did. Anyway, continue.
We also know a little bit about how Maholchik views talent evaluation. So he genuinely seems to buy into the idea that it's play your best five. And what he means by that, he told the sort of joke that if you've got if five centers are your best five, then you better teach two to play guard and two to play tackle. So it seems that he's genuinely looking for that. It happens to be that I think we've got the body types that we would want for the varying positions, but likely it's sort of your first five and then your second five, but you need one dude who can play tackle and step in and one dude who can play any of the three interior spots. And so who that second person on the interior is kind of intriguing. Like you might see some shuffling around. It's likely Gavin Brocious or Christian Phillips coming in. I know Newman's being cross-trained at center. I know Brocious has taken some snaps at center, and then we have Dallas Fincher, who is a returner that played some football.
Oh, there we go. That's generous. Okay, very good.
He was on the field. I believe he played center when was it Samac? Samac was the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was out. So I don't know. I think if as it relates to my expectations for the first year, I expect us to do better than last year. I expect Nate Carter to have a rushing touchdown in at least one of the final 10 games of the season. That I forget who it was, and someone made this point, and whoever's podcast it was, and if you're listening, I'm sorry that I'm stealing it, but that like we should all be really thankful that Iowa existed last year, because MSU's numbers are in the same ballpark for just how god awful the offense was, and it starts up front.
Yeah, I think the passing game was like bottom 10 in the country last year. So
the run couldn't have been. I don't think we broke 100 yards after the first 4 games last year.
Run couldn't have been much better than that. So yeah, there we are. Anything else on the offensive line before we move on to more interesting position groups?
No, other than I guess if you want a positive spin on this, and again to take the basketball analogy, there were clearly talented guys on the offensive line in some capacity. Nick Samac has landed himself at the Ravens, to your point. JD Duplain, I think, got a tryout in the NFL. Looks like he's going to be in the USFL. But sometimes you just need things to turn over. And those two guys in particular played a lot of football here for a great number of years and never saw any progress. We're getting kind of a brand new line. And so better can look bad and still be better, right? Like you can see inexperience and find that maddening, but you should see, hopefully, if Michalczyk is as good as he is, and even Coach Cap was a good recruiter, we should see some better offensive line play at times this year than we have in the past. So, who do you want to chat about next?
Well, I think now we should talk about who they're blocking for, but we save quarterback. So let's go to the running back room, and let's start with 5 minutes on Jaren Mangham. Let's go. Let's mix it up.
Jaren Mangham is at Minnesota. I can't imagine leaving so you could be the fourth string running back at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't.
Bro, the Manghams deserve everything they get. We're stirring the pot. Okay. No, guys that are here, of course, Nate Carter will continue to be your projected starter. This will be his junior year. And
redshirt junior year, yeah?
Correct. Redshirt junior year. And even though he's a transfer himself, it seems like a guy that's been with the program for a long time. That's what trauma bonds will do for you, I guess.
He even, I believe he's the one who said at Media Day that if his career ended, like he'd stay at Michigan State. Like that, like it's the school, like it's what he wants his college experience to be. So I like that. I like that.
We love that. As a dying breed of people that kind of, meld the sports and the school together. It's a concept that listeners in 10 to 15 years will just not be able to understand or relate to in any way, but we still do that to our detriment and naively. But anyway, so Nate Carter.
Number 2, though, will be Kayron Lynch-Adams, who is a very similar build and body type, very similar runner to Nate Carter. Started in the Big Ten at Rutgers. And then transferred to UMass. He interestingly was asked about that and commented that in hindsight it was a lack of maturity leaving Rutgers. That he should have stayed. I think COVID got him a little bit twisted. People got in his ear, but went to UMass and found himself to be very productive. Last year, 236 carries, 1,150 yards, averaging 4.9 yards per carry, 12 TDs.
12 TDs in spite of a 3-9 record over there at UMass.
Yeah. I think led, I'm going to mess this up, had very good yards after contact. So, some of the things that you believed about Nate Carter, because he came in with those sorts of stats too. Carter, I think, probably a little banged up last year, being the only person who could be relied upon to touch the ball, really. This is a nice ad, and reason to believe that Nate Carter can get a spell, right? Like, I think both dudes can probably catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. So nice pickup. He's going to be your 1B, right? Like, if you told me they end up getting more or less the same number of carries, I would not be shocked by that.
And then there's a smattering of other dudes after that. You've got your Brandon Tullis's, you've got your Joseph Martinez's, you've got your, Frazier's, your Chris Williams's. There were some departures there. It wasn't just Jaren Mangham.
Everyone.
Yeah, Berger's gone. Davion Prim's gone. So I think
Tullis is probably
gone.
Yeah, Tullis is probably RB3 based upon what we saw in the spring game.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about who's catching the ball.
Jesus.
Because that was, as we mentioned before, statistically a very poor group. Although I think that had something to do with who was throwing them the ball and at what time. The name that I think we all know, and fortunately returning, Montori Foster, for his redshirt senior year. Yeah, that's what you want, right? Right out the gate, already banged up.
Did appreciate Jonathan Smith unprompted addressing it though, and saying that it's not a season ender, so like expect him to be back. But yeah, Montori Foster is presumably your number one. I think number two is pretty. It's gonna be hard to not say Nick Marsh. If
come on,
if you
dude.
told me by the end of the season that's
okay, this is
look at the rest of that, and you tell me that Nick Marsh isn't getting meaningful snaps.
This is the preseason preview.
Okay,
and we've still got Jerron Glover, who did stuff.
Oh yes, you're right. You're right. It is Jerron Glover. It's
Antonio Gates Jr., who didn't have a spectacular freshman year, but is getting a lot of press right now. And then Alante Brown, of course, is out there kind of to talk to the media, is what it seems like, largely. But like also a dude with, what was it? What are his stats here?
Oh, buddy. Shout out to the only podcast on this. Guess how many career touchdowns Alante Brown has?
0. Is it 0?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. I mean, I don't know exactly what he did at Nebraska, but it's only his second season here. Anyway.
Jerron Glover did get the official visit from Georgia when he was in the transfer portal. Dude does have wheels. Expect a step-up season from him. There's no reason to expect that Antonio Gates Jr. isn't, going through a normal developmental path for a college football player and has a more meaningful contribution as a redshirt sophomore. There's reasons to hope there's talent there, but it is, I think, also, and it's not all their fault, right? There was an offensive line that couldn't block for the quarterback, and the quarterbacks couldn't throw the ball. But there's just not returning production. I think Montori Foster had 536 yards last year, which is not crazy numbers.
Well, there's incoming production. Do you remember last year and in years prior where we were told that the tight ends were a cornerstone of the passing offense, and then they would see the ball once approximately every 3 games?
Well, part of it's because Malik Carr had to decide whether he was going to play that game.
Well, that's true. Yes. Remember the broadcast where he was playing and the broadcasters were like, this Malik Carr, all-time great, spectacular. And I was like, is that true? Are we ever going to see that? Anyway, the important thing, Malik Carr can't hurt you anymore. Jack Velling is in, another massive transfer from Oregon State. Redshirt or true or redshirt junior, I'm not sure. The important thing is potentially 2 years for Mr. Velling. And this is a guy that is bringing massive experience to East Lansing. So like last season as a sophomore earned second team all Pac-12 honors.
Led all tight ends in the country with touchdowns received.
Caught 30 balls for 450 yards. So like as far as tight ends go, this is a guy that is like on no matter what roster he's on. And I do mean no matter what roster he's on, he's a guy that you have circled. And thank God they brought him in from Oregon State. Like,
yeah,
I would love to see him get 50% more touches this year than last.
And what's really important about Jack Velling is, and we'll cover the quarterback later, but he knows the quarterback he's playing with, and a quarterback that may be under duress because of our offensive line preview. Like, the tight end is going to be a prime recipient of targets for blown plays, right? Everything that you see on Jack Velling's tape and hear about his football acumen, dude knows where to sit in the zone to get himself open. Like, and his speed makes him a matchup problem for a lot of linebackers. Like, this is huge add. But as we've talked about, this offense likes to run more than one tight end at a time. So there's a couple young guys who are getting a lot of love. They would be Michael Masunis and Brennan Parachek. Masunis, I believe, was either a high 4-star recruit. Has good hands, but like is known as a real blocker. Like, had meaningful blocking tape as a high school kid, which isn't really a thing that necessarily tight ends are doing. You don't get a lot of tight ends who are both catching passes and blocking in a high school system. It's usually either they're an extra lineman or they get split out. Brennan Parachek, full-blown 4-star recruit out of Dexter or Chelsea?
Saline, I believe.
I thought he went. I know what you're saying that, but I think he went.
The most important thing about Brennan Parachek, coach's son. When his dad was my 7th grade football coach, and
Dexter,
a personal flag for the way that I tackled someone as starting corner, 6'2" starting corner. This is the coaching acumen of Parachek's dad. He grabbed me by the face mask when I went back to the sideline and screamed at me about how bad I was at tackling, and then made me demonstrate tackling that I could do it on him before he let me go back into the game. This was a formative 12-year-old experience for me.
I didn't know that story.
His dad played at Central, I want to say. So he was a big dude. And this guy was grabbing me by the face mask and screaming at me about how bad I was on that tackle. But the same dude that I got the personal foul for tackling, I got him again behind the line of scrimmage. And then he grabbed my face mask a second time and was like, "See, I knew you could tackle. Get back out there." So
he gives the love as much as he gives the hate.
That's what you need to know about Brennan Parachek. It's all about his dad being my 7th grade football coach.
I think I had him from algebra too. I got to be honest. It was
so. Anyway,
yeah.
Anything else about the people that are catching the ball?
Tyneil Hopper. I'll just say he's in like his 80th year of college football. Was the Boise State transfer that was gonna be really good, but got his leg blown up last year. And I believe, like, I don't know, God willing, we never see him in some ways, but Ademola Faleye, who was Sansom Okunloa's cousin that we took as a transfer in a real, like, what are we doing here? Apparently has turned himself into what appears to be like a meaningful Division I football player. Like, again, don't expect him on the field. Don't want him on the field from that. There's meaningful talent in front of him, but I think that room has some depth to it, and has a well-regarded tight ends coach. So,
all right, tight end you this year. Come on, tight ends. Let's go.
Here for it.
Anything that you want to say about the offense? Generally, I think we've covered it all at this point.
Are we going to just not mention the quarterback?
There's nothing else to talk about. Nope, that's it. There's nothing exciting, and no one is listening in to hear about any other position groups or players. So I think we can move on.
Let's do it.
You want to hear something really funny? So I've been watching a lot. I can't play it myself because I don't have an Xbox or a PS5. But both of the streamers that I've been watching play MSU have Aiden Childs threatening to transfer because they don't like he doesn't like MSU's pro style offense, which I imagine can only be true because he's a black player. That's the only NCAA football 2025 looked at his skin tone in the game and was like, would probably prefer a spread offense. Make him a transfer threat. Never mind that he followed the offensive coordinator and head coach from Oregon State to East Lansing.
Which runs
does not matter.
2 tight ends and runs the ball 60% of the time, which is truly a high number for college football.
Mm-hmm.
And then said, I'd like more of that, please. Indeed. How many snaps did he get? He got nearly 100 snaps his freshman year. I think had 39 pass attempts, which tracks for that.
Yep, that's right there. Here, going back to the beginning of the bit, though. So we've only talked about NCAA football 25 with Aiden Childs so far. Most important thing, Caden Hauser, Noah Kim, and unfortunately Sam Levitt, gone. But coming in, we have Aiden Childs, and then coming in for his, like living it up 6-year senior year, Tommy Schuster, who I think is taking a certain mantle in the bars of East Lansing, I presume, spending that NIL money.
If he's not, I'm disappointed in him.
Yeah, that's his whole job. Is like
we talked about that.
Mm-hmm. We called that this is a role that you should want to play in today's college football landscape. And he committed like 3 weeks after we had that conversation. But should we talk about the allegedly $1 million man in Aiden Childs?
I think we should. I think anyone can go and watch Aiden Childs highlights. You might even be able to find some Oregon State games, and you can watch every third drive of the game and see Aiden Childs. You would know that he's a top 60 recruit. I believe other recruits in his class, other quarterbacks in his class that were ranked below him were at places like Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. He is as elite of a recruiting prospect as Michigan State could have ever dreamed to have landed in its own right, and thankfully backdoored our way into it. You honestly have to love that a player like that chose a place like Oregon State. If I'm looking at it from that perspective, and chose a coach like Jonathan Smith, he's a dual threat quarterback who wants to play in a pro style offense because he wants to go to the NFL, and has some maturing to do. That Jonathan Smith has tempered expectations at every turn about what we should expect of Aiden Childs this year. Even Aiden Childs himself has said, I need to work on not getting happy feet and leaving the pocket too soon, right? Like, these are things that you would expect of a quarterback who is extremely athletically talented and has been able to win a lot of football games just being the best athlete out there. So I'm saying all the negative things first, but at the flip of it is incredible athlete. Like, he might be we haven't seen a quarterback like this since Drew Stanton.
Yeah, that is what I keep hearing. And I'm like, say more.
I mean, someone you can use in a meaningful way to run the ball. You can roll him out of the pocket. He's got the vision and the speed to be able to take it on his own if he needs to. He can extend plays on his own. The tools that Aiden Childs has, the tools, and I'm not talking about the leadership or any of the other things that we adore Drew Stanton for, but are the kinds of things that can help put a team on your back in ways that MSU hasn't really had out of their quarterback position in a long time. And in this particular juncture in Michigan State's transition, I couldn't imagine a more valuable asset to have. because Aiden Childs might be the difference between, he might lose you some games, but he might win you some games that you didn't expect. So, but all of that said, Aiden Childs is still 18 years old, will be 18 through a portion of the season. He's very young, which, hey, that's upside too, right? Like that means you're getting more time growth. He started earlier, but I think I'm approaching the season of happy to be wowed, but not expecting him to save Spartan football this year.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My thing, that's all very well said. The thing that I would add, not only is he 18, but Aiden Childs is 6'3", 217.
Yeah.
And he kind of looks like it. Throw it away, Aiden. You hear me? Bud, throw it away. Don't be a hero.
Slide.
Don't die, okay? The fan
Tommy
base,
Schuster is coming from the Riv to the game, so please.
Straight in. He'll bring you a bucket from Crunchies, whatever you need. Do not die. Don't be a hero. Throw the ball away. Live to fight another day. Please, bud. For real this time now. Anything else that you want to say generally about the offense? What are the expectations for you? In the Ohio State game, in a replacement level Big Ten game, what are the expectations? And then against Ohio State, what are the expectations?
So I expect it's gonna be really tough if we can't run the ball. I'll say that, but everything that you've seen on tape out of this staff from their time at Oregon State, even in the years in which they were the first year where they were still Dudu Kaka, they know how to create schemes to create production. So I expect to see that. I expect to see the coaching translate. I expect to see, professionalism and competency and talent be what talent be, right? Building a system also takes time. That takes indoctrination. But I certainly, I fully believe that this staff is smart enough and competent enough to win the games that we look at on the schedule and we should win that game. The ones that were I don't have expectations of them. So those first four are going to tell me a lot, because I look at those first four and I don't care what anyone says about Maryland. I expect to win those first four games. I don't know. What about you?
I think this is a team that if it can stay healthy, it has upside potential. The problem is football is a contact sport, and we're going to be playing some hard-hit teams. And once things start to lose their footing a little bit,
right,
there's not a lot backing these guys up. So I think this could be, if this is a healthy offense, could be a 7-8 win season. If it's not a healthy offense, could be a 4 or 5 win season. So I think these guys managing to stay in games and contribute, I know that that's football, but I think that's going to be really important. And if it doesn't happen, a few key injuries could derail the whole scheme.
Which
has already kind of happened. Yeah.
We're not gamblers here. We don't give out gambling advice, but I guess vibe check for you. If you had to gamble, you taking the over, you taking the under?
Oh, I'm taking the over. Are you serious? Have you looked at our schedule? It's got
I know. That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, I'm taking the over. All right. Do you want to talk real quick? Because we talked 20 minutes about the MSU offensive line, and then we cover some other time. You want to talk about this game I was watching on Instagram Live instead of celebrating my mother on the celebration on the anniversary of her birth?
Well, we've got two. So MSU hoops, as we talked about last week, has traveled to Spain. They've played 2 games so far and created some wholesome and delightful social media content along the way.
The content has been very good.
I think they must have made some changes over at the socials office. It's been better than usual out of them. But yeah, so played Madrid All-Stars and beat them 94-87, and then headed to Valencia and destroyed them 105-59. Yeah. So like we're not going to belabor this, I think, too terribly long for a variety of reasons. One of which is this is going to come as a shock. I don't know much about Spanish basketball. And I don't think you do either, Kevin.
Are you gonna cop to that right up front and not misrepresent yourself? You used to be fun, Chauncey, but it's not.
I also know that Tom Izzo, as we talked about last week, said...
For those that can't see, I'm pointing at the camera. We know that we're making Twitter references for very few people right now. So don't be upset if you're one of those people. Continue, Chauncey.
Because we all used to laugh and have fun. We also know that Tom Izzo said in advance of the trip that he was going to screw around with lineups. Mm-hmm. And boy, howdy, has he been screwing around with lineups. I think Nick Sanders started in the Valencia game. I don't know. I mean, he got 2
Well,
turns.
he
I know
ended
that.
it with a 3, so that's exciting.
So from the first game,
5 minutes total.
We have a leading scorer of Xavier Booker with 21 points.
19 of which in the first half, yeah.
Yeah. But went 4 for 6 from beyond the arc, 7 boards. There was some messing around with 2 big lineups. I know that. A lot of people not saying great things about the bigs, but I'll say this: Coop brings down 9 boards, Kohler brings down 12, and Kohler went 6 for 11 from the floor. Or I'm sorry, 6 for 11 from 2-point land and 0 for 1 from 3. So I don't know. It was, other than that, the only other thing I'd say is that Jaden Akins had 1 point, and that is concerning. I don't care if it's the first game and it's in Spain. Dude is supposed to be your number 1. Don't like him getting off the bus and scoring 1 point.
He did have 11 in game 2. The concern is the misses. So he was 4 for 7 from 2 in game 2, 1 for 3 from 3. So he's missed a lot of 3-point attempts across 2 games. And that is something that we saw at the beginning of last season. So fun. Everything that's old is new again. Here we are.
But couple other things to note that we've seen from this team. Some real tenacity on the boards. The assists have been electric. Cohen Carr in that second game. I mean, obviously there was a large talent gap between Valencia and MSU, but I don't care. Cohen Carr putting up 20 is still noteworthy, and they weren't all dunks. There were a lot of great dunks, but they weren't all dunks.
None of them were threes. Zero attempted threes for Cohen Carr.
But you know what? It's not like people weren't taking threes in that game. MSU went 12 for 35 in 3-point. That can't be right. Is this Spanish weird math? That can't be right.
12 for 35. That's about 34%. Yeah, that sounds right. What's your stuff? That's the third. Just under
the 35 attempts is what I'm questioning.
Oh, and then also if you're 12 for 35, you'd be over. Yeah,
actually, it looks like no wait, I'm not doing the math on this, but either way, Um, of note, too, is that our boy
Yeah,
Jackson Kohler.
35.
Wow. Can you remember the last time MSU took 35 3-points in a game?
Well, it's an exhibition match. So
But of note, Jackson Kohler took 4. And one in the previous game, he missed it, but it is, we talked about it. I know Graham has talked about it, that last season, you can't fully judge what Jackson Kohler could have been as a player on the team when he didn't get to join the team until after Christmas. At that point in time, the offense is built. Everyone's in a flow. He clearly has a green light to take a 3-pointer, and that is meaningful. That's between him and Booker stretching the floor. Like, that's a big deal. And you know who gets to backdoor the hell out of people when someone can stretch the floor? Coen Carr.
Is that your high scoring player in game 2, Coen Carr?
Yeah.
20 points in 20 minutes.
So I guess I'll say this. There's reasons to be a little bit excited. I don't care about the talent level. I don't know anything about it. But even if it was a bad team, you can see the way they're trying to play together, and that's intriguing to me. What are some things that you've read about? What did you notice when you were ignoring your mother?
Well, I got a little nugget for you. Gerard Soleil, I think, is the gentleman that appears to be putting these teams together for MSU to play. He's been interacting with friend of the pod, the real Shardy, on Twitter, providing the actual box score that we were just, cross-referencing, and then also providing himself a little commentary. And he said that they're a good team. He said that he's never seen anything like it. But there were 2 things that really stood out to me that, as an MSU basketball player, or not player, but fan, I haven't seen in years. He said that they have a killer instinct, and he said that they wanted revenge. And those are things, revenge for a game that they won. Like, they really wanted to prove it in the next one. And I haven't seen that out of this MSU basketball program since Cassius walked out the door, since he graduated. And to have that in an exhibition game, that's everything that I want. That's what I really want out of this program. That's what I want. That's what I'm expecting.
Poor Valencia took a beating because Madrid was maybe better than MSU anticipated.
And like, running the score up like that and going for the neck and stomping on it, that is what this team has lacked for a long time. It's not that individual players on this team haven't had it. Certainly Tyson Walker did, but then also, like, he couldn't do it all, or when he tried to do it all, it didn't work at times. Like, but to have it now as potentially part of the program or part of your starting point guard in the way that he's wired, that was music to my ears. I don't really care what happens in the games, individually or in the rotations or what's happening. That's all kind of interesting. But having someone there, having an impartial third party say that about this team, is the most encouraging thing of all.
I also, I think tying into that, Fears had 6 and 7 assists respectively between the 2 games. I believe in one game they had 10 steals. The next game they had 20. There's the boards are better. I don't know. I'm with you though. And actually the one thing I'd push back on you on all of that is that I don't even know that it was late Cassius is the last time we saw that. Like, the Cassius Tillman team, I don't know that they were fully wired. They were great, but I don't know that they were fully wired that way. Like, you might have to go a little further back to find truly, I'm going to humiliate this team just because you're in the same country as this other team levels of, like, anger, right?
It doesn't need to be like that. It can just be like, I want to win the hell out of this game. That's all I want. Because
Sure.
we've
No,
been
no, I
playing
agree.
down to competition for years now. Playing down, playing up. Like, I just want this team to be self-motivated. And if that means
The standard is the standard, right?
if that means it's got a little bit of an angry streak to it, that's fine by me. I don't I'm happy to accept that as well.
All right, let's chat a little bit, very briefly, because we know about as much of this as we do Spanish hoops. But it is worth mentioning that our women's soccer team started the season off with a big dub against Notre Dame, who they've not beaten since 1989.
13 game losing streak, apparently.
That is incredible. But just an indicator, a further indicator of how much things have shifted within that program since, was it Hostler took over?
Yeah.
Don't kill me for not knowing this. It's Hostler. It's Hostler, right?
But Willie, yeah, it's fine. Very encouraging. It's in contrast to our first topic as we go off Grand River. But before we do that, we're sipping on some rums right now, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have my phone. It's on the
finished
charger.
mine.
Have we heard from listener Mike Jones what we're drinking here? What did you think about the rum, by the way? I don't do a lot of rum sipping, I have to say. As far as my sipping alcohol goes, it's like whiskey, scotch represents like 95%, and then 4% is tequila of some kind, and then
everything else is whatever Mike Jones
1%
gave
is
you.
like, yeah, is like so what did you think? First off, do you do a lot of rum sipping in a class?
Not a ton, but I think more than you do. I would say this one was intriguing. It had more in common in my mind with a whiskey profile than a conventional rum profile. I wouldn't categorize it as spiced. I'll be interested to see what he says it is. Because it's okay, it's Plantation Barbados. Don't love that name, by the way, but Plantation Barbados 5-year. It's. I'll say this: if you were looking to make a transition, and you're a whiskey drinker, or a bourbon drinker, this would be a real interesting foray into rums. It's got a little bit of a sweet, sugary undertone to it, but not too much. It's going to have more in common with your brown liquor profile than anything else. What did you think?
I agree. In fact, when I opened it up and I sniffed it at first, I was like, this is a whiskey. And then I put it in the glass and I sipped it and I was like, no, it's definitely got those rum notes. So if you want to bridge over and you don't want to spend that much for a fifth, I mean,
gorgeous bottle too.
Yeah, it's a very nice bottle to have on the shelf, and it's only $30. It's like a traditional Scotch looking bottle that they've put a little bit of a rum remix on.
Oh, so it says the double aging creates a first wave of tropical candied fruits, leading to a voluptuous bourbon vanilla note. So we were spot on that.
Yeah, the vanilla note is definitely there. I mean, I'd be perfectly happy to have this on the shelf and serve this to someone. I would want to mix this. I don't think like it's not rummy enough to like stand on its own against other parts of a recipe. But I think if you wanted a rum to sip on, you could do a lot worse than this. Much
worse. And eminently affordable too. I'm looking here. I don't know what'll run at your local Meijer, but I'm seeing here at some spirit shop $26.50. Like,
yeah.
And
it'll catch your eye at a restaurant. You know, if you see it back there, order it up.
Yeah, give it a shot. Like, oh, it is. It's in bourbon casks. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm feeling way better about my my palate right now. So, Mike Jones, keep bringing the challenges. All right, let's head off Grand River, shall we?
Yeah, well,
Or actually, before we do, we should say something about our dear friends because listener Mike Jones, I believe, his company interacted with Mama's Mercantile and Eatery off of the Clear Lake Road. And so if you find yourself there, you might be able to catch yourself some Barbados Plantation 5. Or not, who's to say? But you can catch great food at Mama's Mercantile and Eatery. So check them out on Instagram at mamas.merc on Instagram to see their latest. I have been informed by multiple people that trivia does not exist any longer, but there's excellent things happening out on the patio on weekends. So check that out if you get a chance. You okay there with the headphones? You keep taking them on and off this whole episode.
I'm just double checking. That's all. We're good.
Check the cans. All right.
We're good.
Let's head off Grand River, shall we?
Ciao. So our good friend Graham, he wrote an article in the LSJ about a little topic that no one's talking about.
Indeed, that was in the headline title.
Yeah, right up front in your face, really putting your nose in it, I would say. And the subject was no one's talking about some of the biggest stories in college sports and how they're going to change the landscape. Specifically, what's happening with changes to the way that players are going to be compensated and the way that the payouts are going to go and the scholarship limits and all those types of things. And then also the knock-on effects that that's going to have on the athletic department in the long term. And he kept doubling down on this notion that no one's talking about this, as if to just twist the knife on us for and over. He might as well put in parentheses in the LSJ, except for niche alt-left MSU sports podcasts that truly very few people could possibly listen to. It was mean. It felt like a direct personal attack. I don't know.
I've already written a letter to the editor that the byline should be revised to "can't read, can't write."
In fairness to Graham, we just have Alan Haller as a listener. He has Alan Haller to reach out to for comment. But it is good. Truly, though, it is good to bring this to the attention of the LSJ public, especially at this time before the new football season's happening, because we're in the middle of it. We cover it every week, but like the sea change in college sports that's happening right now cannot be overstated and is being dramatically understated in the mainstream media. Like, he is right. Like, truly, they're talking about like the one-offs, they're talking about NIL, they're talking about that kind of stuff, but it doesn't seem like the mainstream media is really, maybe they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they're scared of like, we're making massive investments in college sports at the same time that it's changing dramatically. Never mind that it's changing as a result of those massive investments. Maybe that's also part of the reason that they're kind of trying to whistle past the graveyard on that. But yeah, bring it to the normies, I guess. And he could have put in a word. If you wanted to dig in a little bit more on this subject, just listen.
Heaven forbid. Shout out. Jesus.
Truly, it is something that needs to be said, and it needs to be said explicitly, and it needs to be said much, much more. So
there are some really fantastic details in there that we've not talked about quite so explicitly, like that scholarships aren't like RSUs. They don't just sit on a shelf.
They're not free. That has a cost directly.
The athletic department pays that tuition. And
we have talked about that a couple times.
Like, couldn't they just not pay for it? Couldn't they
Yeah.
just be like,
Clearly you're a lawyer and not like an accountant, because the accountants out there are like, no, idiot. That's not how the system works.
it's just a person. Anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's worth reading, and I do think uh kind of puts a little bit of a challenge down to MSU, particularly Alan Haller's commitment to not cut sports, because
It's his personal commitment to not cut sports, as in, you will need to find a new athletic director. It is not an institutional
right,
commitment.
right, no, no,
Those
no,
are
right,
two
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
different things.
So, but I think we've largely been very pleased with the job that Alan Haller has done. I would prefer to retain Alan Haller, I guess, is what I'm saying. And
And we need to also acknowledge that we were a little critical of the hire when
yeah,
it happened, because we thought it would be a good time to go outside the program. But he has done a good job, and he's hired very good coaches, clearly. We can
so I
almost
don't.
remember their names at times.
I would, but I think if MSU is as happy with Alan Haller as I think most of the fan base is, you'd be hard pressed to say, "Okay, Alan, make this work." Like, how are you going to do that?
Reminded, though, in all of this, of the time that Luana K. Simon, and this was multiple actually, said that you need to find a new university president before she'd be willing to pay the players. And we did. We found like 4 new university presidents since then. And the players from when she was president are going to get compensated, backlog payment. And the new players are going to get a piece of the media rights deal. So there we are.
Well, anyway, thanks for nothing, Graham. But everyone go check out the piece. Subscribe to the LSJ. But seriously, Graham, you're a piece of shit. All right, let's.
It
Speaking
was
of,
just so mean that no one's
like,
thinking about this. No one's
you might as well have said a bunch of these no ones, like
no one of merit is talking about
substance, consequence, influence. Truly, no one. Thanks, Graham. All right, let's head off Grand River again. And Kevin, what is Austria?
Uh, I don't know that I can say, because I don't want to get sued for $100,000. And also, we're definitely. I think those are the damages being sought after.
How has it not gone away?
That's
Anyway,
my question. Is like,
folks, you'll remember.
and immediately, someone who isn't an intern should have been like, "Well, we've been bought. We've been found out. Pay the royalties to this. Pay the licensing. Send it. I'm sorry, mea culpa." To the company that made this in Finland or wherever they are. Continue.
So anyway, folks will remember that I don't know where on the we should get Sheehan back on to stack rank embarrassments from last year because I don't know where actually this sits. But
I have a test for this.
Yeah.
Explain it, and then I'll tell you my test.
You'll recall that in the midst of an embarrassing season for a variety of reasons, that MSU ran some trivia, wherein they asked the crowd what was the birthplace of Hitler, which, whatever, not great, but a trivia question.
It seems like the type of history that most college-educated people should know already.
If it was at a bar trivia, I don't. Anyway, but MSU was down. It wasn't a thing that we needed in that particular moment. We can say that. And then I believe MSU threw an intern under the bus and said that they were just stealing it from a YouTube channel. So they didn't even vet the trivia.
Well, they said that it was a third party. It came from a third party, and it was intentionally vague. The initial statement.
Yeah, but I do believe it came out later. They were stealing it from a YouTube channel. And so Lowe said channel is suing Michigan State now for, I guess, disparagement of some sort or another. I don't know. Honestly, I think they should have just stood by it's a valid trivia question. Like,
the institution.
No, not MSU. I think MSU should have baited their way all the way out of it. But the trivia company should be like, "Fuck you, idiots!" Like that's a perfectly valid trivia question. Like
we made
just a trivia product. Like if the remainder of the trivia was all like clan related, then maybe I would lean into not a great trivia company, but like it was fine. Anyway, go ahead.
Fair usage, Jonesy. Anything that the university can claim for fair use?
I don't know.
It seems really unlikely to me, but I guess you could claim it's an educational institution. It was an educational use.
Yeah, that argument has gone over so well against the student athletes. So I don't think so. As how much money did they make on that game?
Clearly, the university owed whoever made that money. This should have been taken care of last fall, and this never should have happened. My test for how big a story it is or not is to go to the college football subreddit and see how many upvotes it gets and how long it sticks around. Because it's so dumb, this one stuck around for a while. It was on the front page for a couple of days. So that's where we're at. But if you click into it and you read the comments, it was a lot of like,
Rafflecopter.
This is a real dumb one.
It couldn't have helped. I think there was a compounding effect to it, right? Too, that it was sort of grave dancing, right? MSU was already in a like, look at these idiots.
Correct.
And well deserved.
Kicked wall down situation. Anything else before we move on to these Twitter questions?
No, let's do that. That's
first up from Mike Jones asks, do you guys think you could get some legit hockey commentary if I donated more bottles? Eyes emoji. There's only one way to find out, Mike Jones. There's only one way to find out.
Yeah. No promises, but
the answer is no. Like there is no such person. But do try, Mike Jones. Do try. Next up from Mike Jones, the novelty of outdoor hockey games. Cool to go to Wrigley. We didn't talk about this, but this was announced. It looks like we're going to be playing Wisconsin in Wrigley Field as part of the like wider Big Ten hockey in Chicago thing. We're not the only game. Worth it for terrible sightlines to actually watch the game? How much would you pay to go? Have you gone to one of these, let's be honest, gimmick games?
Are we talking hockey specifically? Or I mean, I guess the answer actually for me is no, all around. Okay. But I would say on top of that, that if there was one that I was exceedingly not likely to go to, in fact, don't really want to go to, it is in fact a hockey game. And it's not because hockey isn't more enjoyable in person. It is. You should absolutely go to a game. But I have zero interest being near that fucking lake in the middle of winter and being that cold watching a game. Pass. Full pass.
The good news is, though, you'd be in Wrigley Field. It's got the high walls, going to break the wind for you. But I do know what you mean. Like the most miserable sporting experience of my entire life was watching an MSU football game at Northwestern, and the wind whipping in off the lake like half a mile away or whatever it is. Truly awful experience.
We should see if we could get out for one of the Northwestern games this year, just like because their temporary stadium is on the lake.
Yeah, just to experience it.
I mean,
just to be like,
no one's gonna go.
Really hate yourself. Um, I kind of like the gimmick games. I'm a sucker for the dumb gimmicks. I've been to a couple basketball games in football stadiums, but I don't know that I'm gonna make the time for this. And finally, from Mike Jones, after 2 games in Spain, what excites you most about the basketball season? I think we already made this clear, but I'll put it to you.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I would just add on to what we didn't say is that some of the stuff that we wanted, like what Greg was talking about earlier, and I think said really well about the personality type, is that also this team is far from a finished product. We're talking end of summer right now, they're playing games. And then a lot of the team starts baking in over the next couple months. So we're going to see more Fiddler. We're going to see more Jaden Akins. We're going to see more Jackson Colt. Like, there's going to be things that improve in addition to the Cohen Card Dunk Fest. And, like, this team is going to get a lot better. And the fact that we're seeing some fun stuff on offense, I'm encouraged by it. Like, that's exciting.
I was thinking about this week. We're at the beginning of a new basketball era. We do a lot of chunking this up into smaller pieces, and we've talked about it on the podcast. Like, we're in a mini era right now, or this is the Cassius era, or whatever it is. I think very clearly we're at the beginning of a new era. And I was thinking about this in the context of, like, are we actually at risk of Tom Izzo retiring because of the whole Northern Michigan thing and that kind of stuff? And I think my new thing is he's going to retire with this era. I think this might be the final era of Tom Izzo's career. And that is exciting to me, that we're at the beginning of a new era. I think it'll be a longer than usual era. I think we're going to look back at this and it'll be like 3-4 years. I do think it's a lot of upside. Tom Izzo is recruiting really well right now, maybe even the best of his career, consistently, not in like spurts, but like the body of work. Yeah. There's a lot to be excited about this team. There's a lot to like about this team. And this team won't be fully actualized this year, but it is growing into something that it can be. And what it can be has a really high ceiling. And that's what's really exciting for me. Yeah. Next up from Thomas Zambiasi, should we be worried about the basketball team's shooting after visiting a Spanish club known for their refusal to play offense?
Thomas, apparently we should have had you on the pod because you are more expert in Spanish ball than we are, and apparently more than other people on Twitter. But I'm also confused by your question, because I guess the implication of the team's refusal to play offense is that they play staunch defense. But you didn't say that.
I think it's that we gave up a lot of points to a team that presumably does not score a lot of points. I think that's what we're getting at here.
Thomas, so I don't know if maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't, but that particular team is not the same team from week to week to week. And so the games that they played against other college teams, it is not the same roster. And indeed, the man who's tasked with crafting this said we deliberately created the hardest roster for Michigan State because we wanted to put forth the best challenge possible. So I don't know, and I'll say this too of the guard. I only saw a couple clips, and I forget the guard's name from the Madrid team, but dude was fucking impressive. Like, I mean. Some of the passes that guy was able to execute cross court, like, were insane. So I don't know. I also would say this, that I think Tom Izzo's defense is both simultaneously very simple and very complicated for people to understand. Timing is everything in it, and to a degree, like, knowing in a millisecond what your situation is very important. And so you have to keep in mind that we played, I think, three true freshmen, a redshirt freshman, and a handful of sophomores in the first game of the season. after traveling across the Atlantic. Like, I'm not taking too much stock in it.
Next up from Thomas Jonesy, what's your favorite game day beer?
I will always drink a Miller Lite. Not going to apologize for it.
He's a Miller Lite guy, listeners.
But if you gave me a natty light, if you gave me a natty light, I'd be very happy. What's your game day beer?
Well, Michael Jones, much like this one, my favorite game day beer is the one that's in your hand.
Salute.
I am truly, though, Thomas. I'm just excited for game days to come back, and I'm happy to drink whatever is presented to me or whatever I have in the fridge. Next up from Sports Ball, Joey, when you think back about how we've had a defensive-minded football coach, then an offensive-minded one, and now an offensive-minded coach again, what makes you most excited for an eventual, hopefully now, competent offense?
I'm excited about this offense. I don't know about you, Kevin, that it doesn't seem overly gimmicky.
Yeah.
It's just good. Like, I like that it's a dynamic offense that's run heavy and uses 2 tight ends. I think that's great. I do worry, if I can plant this little seed for you, though, buddy. Tight ends are a game breaker. We've seen that in the NFL, right? I mean, there's a reason that Travis Kelce is as desired of a football player as he is because
and is a man and is a talent behind the mic and a dancer on stage. Renaissance man, Travis Kelce, man of our time.
Real Renaissance man. But I worry, I'm just going to say, because this staff has now put in, I believe, 2 tight ends to the NFL, and it's looking to put in a third in Velling. That feels like a lot to sustain.
Well, that won't be a problem this year. Maybe in the future, but this year,
that's a tomorrow problem.
Yeah, that's not a today problem.
Yeah. I got this one next. Beth Amaro. Okay. Greg, what do you think is the hardest to do? Make a 65-yard field goal, hit a game-winning buzzer beater from half court, or hit a 105-mile-per-hour fastball?
Well, the guys that do it tell you that it's number 3. Hit a 105-mile-per-hour fastball.
Yeah.
65-yard field goal, I think, is also tough. And hitting a game-winning buzzer beater from half court, unless you're Steph Curry, there's a big part of chance in this. But like the expectations for when you're trying to kick a 65-yard field goal and hit a game-winning buzzer beater from half court, expectations are lower. Like you're expecting that's kind of a flyer. But you go to the mound against a guy throwing 105, you're expected to hit the ball. Like pitchers are throwing
the job
now in the league. That's the job. Like it doesn't really belong in the same category as these other 2. And
the other 2 are clutch moments, right? Like those are clutch plays. The other one's just another day at the office.
Have you been in the stadium with a guy throwing over 100?
I'm sure that I have.
To me, I don't know if it's just in my head or if this is true, but when you're in person and there's a guy throwing the ball over 100, it seems almost like there's a sharpness to it, like a sizzle almost that you can hear, or like an extra little crack of the pitcher's mitt. Like it feels different and it grabs my attention whenever I'm there. I'm at baseball games now past the age of 21. I'm happy to be up on the Pepsi porch or whatever it's called at whatever various stadium I might be at. But if a dude is throwing over 100 and I'm in the stands, I'm watching every single pitch that guy throws because it's crazy. These guys can wrench their bodies so hard that a ball goes over 100 miles an hour accurately into a catcher's mitt. It's bananas. And guys will tell you that's the guys that do these things will tell you that's the hardest one. And it seems like it to me. But do you feel any differently?
No, that was the easy. I mean, to a degree, the other two you can train for, right?
Mhm.
That not that I ever think I could hit a 65-yard field goal. I think there's a degree to which you're being guarded on the half court shot, but like that's a thing you can practice. Certainly, you need strength and conditioning staff to like help you get that strength for it. But I mean, what was the one Cassius hit from like 3/4 because Maryland just chose not to guard him?
Just we're like, nah, we don't.
Right, like,
we're not really guarding at the end of the clock.
and that's not to diminish the talent because there is a ton of talent in that, right? But like, yeah, it's sort of when you watch the reaction times of F1 drivers, right? And some of the stuff that they're capable of doing. The idea that I mean the distance between mound to plate is so insane. You're making an educated guess on whether to swing mid throw at some level, right? Like, so absolutely that one. Next up from Beth Amaro, Kevin, I'm going to pitch this one to you. Have you ever considered doing a live football play-by-play commentary for your pod fans?
I can imagine Beth Amaro sitting in Hawaii with a little thing in her ear, the way that the old heads do in Spartan Stadium, so they can still hear George Blaha. But it's Jess Plum screaming obscenities directly into her ear. Beth, maybe we should just give you a taste of what the game day group thread looks like with your favorite Alex Plum. And then you can decide whether you want to do a play-by-play commentary.
Yeah, because I just assure you, and you know what, this isn't unique to Alex in the sense that we're because he's not here, we're gonna pick on him. But it doesn't matter for Alex if there's context for why a player failed. Because as they say in football, ultimate team game, 10 guys can do the right thing, one guy doesn't, the whole play's blown up, right? But Nate Carter, seemingly nicest human being in the entire world, gets tackled for a loss, and the vial that will just populate about Nate Carter is insane. And there's no being like, well, actually, because Alex has zero interest in that. But you know what, Beth, I do think there'd be some entertainment value. I do think, though, that probably the real depressing thing is, as Graham Couch would point out to you, is that you would be the only one there because no one is talking about it.
Yeah. Jones, do you want to read this next one for us?
Yeah. The Keithski. It must be the failed lawyer in him that causes Jones to lash out so irrationally when he is fucking wrong. Oh, Keith.
Know what this is about anymore. I really have not followed this drama.
He called me out for something that I said. He said I said the previous episode, but I didn't. And so I just doubled down on the vitriol towards Keith. So that's all. I've escalated, and Keith, I respect you escalating in kind.
Keith, though, I will say, I threw you a bone, bud. Allegedly $1 million man is what I said about Aiden Childs, and that was direct tip of the cap to you.
I'm gonna cut this now because Keith should be smart enough to pick this up.
Next up from Keith, Plum and Greach. Favorite place to sit in Spartan Stadium?
I see what you did there, Keith, discluding me. Okay.
The answer is the student section, right? Like, we're all chasing that dragon that is watching a football game in the student section.
In the same way that Mike Valenti's chasing the dragon of his post Notre Dame rant, yes, we are all, and for those of us who really want it, and I think many of our listeners probably do, you hate sitting anywhere else.
Yep.
You low-key hate it.
And the operative there is sitting. The MS Spartan Stadium can get loud and it can get snake pity, but also the social pressure at times to sit down is then just be at home on your couch. If it's third down, we're here for a reason. Why are we not cheering? Why are we not participating in this?
And I'm going to double down on this, that like what you supposedly show up this game wanting your team to win.
Mhm.
Right, like we talk about now all of these other pressures to contribute to NIL to help your team win, to contribute to the Spartan Fund before that, right? Like there's all these things that are being asked of you. And the one thing that you can actually do to help your team win is be fucking loud and rambunctious. And you
It's
can't
the thing that you can contribute.
like
Home field
attitude and
advantage is
effort.
real.
I know it's insane to me. I can't. It feels a bit like the Gabe Brown effect. That you just have that there's a sort of a critical mass of toxicity that sets in of like being shitty that then forces people down, and then eventually you and I get our spirits beaten down. So by the time that we're 50 years old, we're sitting in there. But like, I would encourage listeners, rebel at this nonsense.
Yeah.
If you're not in the student section, like, let's make this place a better place.
I don't have kids. And if I ever did have kids, maybe I would have meant this. But like, I can't imagine a scenario where I would ever social pressure someone in front of me to sit down. Like, even if I had kids, I'd be like, we got to stand now. It's stand and cheer time. That's why we're here. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
Anyway, next up from Kate Wall. I love him as a player, but when do we start hearing Jaden Akins to Gabe Brown comparisons? Great athlete, can rip it from three, but can't dribble and is prone to shooting slumps and just disappearing at times. Praying he proves me wrong all season, but that first game in Spain, oof. Do you think Gabe is the comp here? Maybe that's not
freak athleticism, but doesn't utilize it very often.
Yeah,
I mean, the difference between I'll say this: the difference between Gabe and Jaden is that Gabe was a wing, like that was his natural position. I think Jaden Akins is naturally a guard. Jaden Akins hasn't played guard against meaningful competition ever in his Michigan State career, though. He did in high school, but he hasn't yet. So give him a minute to find it. But it's a great comp. I can't believe I'm sticking up for Jaden Akins because it's a great comp. But I do think that's a difference between Gabe Brown and Jaden Akins. And Jaden Akins now is supposed to do things with the ball in his hand, whereas Gabe, that was never expected, right? It was sit in the corner, Gabe.
Yeah, it was spot up. Shoot. Didn't we have a really rough start of the season last year for Jaden Akins?
Well, the whole team couldn't shoot a three at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. And he was a big part of that, if I recall.
But Tyson could neither.
I need to go back and look at this in greater detail, but like, no, he had 14 against. No, it was rough against teams that matter at the beginning of the year last year. Anyway,
great comp, Kate. Great comp.
Yeah, good job, Kate. Well done. Next up from Ali. Hope you're feeling well, bud. Hope you're on the mend. I reached my first ACL recovering milestone. 120 degrees of flexion. This sounds made up, but I'm sure for ACL people, flexion, that's important. On the topic of 120, how many points do you think the offense scores in the first 120 minutes of the season? That's 2 games, Plum. At first, I was like, this is very Momopoly. And then that's 2 games, Plum. Just paid off the whole thing. And I was like, that's very not Momopoly. What do you think? This is against, of course, Florida Atlantic and is it Western Maryland? Florida Atlantic and Maryland.
Oof. So the problem is that I think
or Prairie View is what I was thinking, not Western, but Prairie View.
But it's Maryland. Maryland second.
Yep, Maryland second.
So,
On the road.
dear listener, FAU I think is going to be a little bit better than you might think they're going to be. And Maryland is actually probably most loaded on defense. The thing about Maryland is that they're known for being great in September. So, how many points in the first 120? It's hard.
Yeah.
Can I be real here for a second?
70. I'm going to go 70 points.
Wow, I'm having a hard time being positive. I'm having
65.
I think 64 is a good over under. I think it's a really good over under.
Interesting. Let's come back to this. Good question, Ali. I'm sorry that I don't know about your ACL things. Next up from Mama Belief. I'm sorry that I disparaged you with the Ali question, Mama Belief. I don't recall hearing about Mama's Mercantile Eatery on last week's podcast. We had a lot going on. Okay, Mama Belief.
Yeah,
What was
the technical issues?
about great food experience? And did you not give Sheehan a Mama's Merc gift certificate for his guest appearance? That's not for us to do. That's for Mama's Merc to do themselves if they were so inclined. So thanks for calling us out. I'm glad to hear that you listened to us for the promotional segments. I think that is good fodder for us. We can put that in the CV for future promotional
Based on the questions,
relationships.
certainly not for the content. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, or based on the headlines in the LSJ. For budgetary reasons, also from Monopoly, Robert Griffin III was just fired from ESPN. They keep saying fired, but it seems like a layoff situation. But everything that I saw, Sam Ponder and Robert Griffin got let go, which is weird because do you remember?
Is it a layoff when it's just two people?
It's a layoff when they're making as much money as they made. But it looks like he was ascendant, like he was going to be kind of the dude, and then he didn't get that one gig, and now he's out. A fan called into an ESPN show to defend RG3, and RG3 is now offering his Heisman to the fan for use for a day. Whose Heisman would you like to have for a day, and where would you take it to show it off? Okay.
I would like...
I don't care whose Heisman it is. I would take it. Kenneth Walker and I would take it, and we would flush it down a toilet and leave it there. And
well,
that's
then, wait, let's be very clear. There's two Heismans you would take. Reggie Bush for getting it fucking back because fuck you, Reggie Bush. It wasn't legal at the time. Or Charles Woodson. Like, if we're going to do this, we might as well do this. Like, if you're going to put it in the fucking...
Who won it when it was actually... Who actually won it the year that Kenneth Walker was supposed to be there? It's going to really bother me.
I'm sure
Caleb Williams. That was the Caleb Williams year? Or was that the Bryce Young year?
Bryce Young.
Okay.
God. Yeah, honestly, Kenneth Walker deserved it. Oh my God, that makes me...
Yeah, I would give it to him, and then we would flush it down the toilet. The two of us together.
We take it to an MSU tailgate. No, a U of M tailgate, because they have notoriously worse bathroom situation, and we would put it in a porta potty, and then fucking Bryce Young can go and fish it out himself.
Yep. Next up from Beppe Plum, rant of the week, personal tips. Right?
Yep, that's
personal
what it says.
It's not a class. So if you have dyslexia, old man, I'm having my own dyslexia right now. And a 99% chance of typos, do not copy and paste from a spreadsheet to a legal document that is hosted by the state. Not that I did that or anything. Okay, I did. So we're one and the same. Beppe Plum.
Yep. Greg, on a more somber note, would you rather live forever but not be able to interact with anyone, or die now, this moment, and we can forget about your existence? Yeah, I suck. Toodles. This is worse than a Dom Garrett wet blanket.
Yeah, this is a real Sophie's choice. Remember when we talked about Sophie's choices for a while on the podcast because someone didn't fully understand what they were? Yeah, this is a die situation, right? Like, what's the point of living forever and not interacting with anyone? It's like a ghost. You're a ghost. What's the benefit of that? Who?
Voyeurism? You'd have to get real into it. I mean, like, I don't mean it.
Real into it. And then in the heat death of the universe, just be like, remember all that voyeurizing I did?
I guess it'd be nice to watch my son grow up.
I think you can do that. Well, I guess
Dead?
if you've only got two options, would you, as a father, Michael Jones, would you damn yourself to living like this forever just to watch Blake grow up? Or would you choose the merciful way out?
Oh, I'd for sure rather watch.
Even if it meant you couldn't interact with them and then you would live forever, including all the really boring parts in a trillion years that where nothing is happening at the heat death of the universe.
I mean, I gotta ask.
You'd even remember Blake at that point.
I think we got to ask some follow-up questions here. This feels like a real would you rather sort of comedy bang bang style. We need to ask some follow-ups. Like, do I get to wander? Am I stuck where I am? Can I just do people notice? Like, can I truly be in the middle of something and no one will just notice me? I don't know. I got questions.
I think like you are a ghost, basically.
I think
I would tell Blake.
Can I harm people? Can I help people?
Harm. The first question was harm.
Well, I'm thinking about sort of can you go superhero on this? Can you like stop crime because people won't be able to see you?
Good recovery, Mike Jones. Next up from Raymond. This week, in addition to Span and Marquette. What's Span?
Spain?
Yeah, I guess that's probably a typo. Spain and Marquette. Tom Izzo indicates that he'd like to build a large outdoor court in his backyard, hoping to fulfill a childhood dream and reconcile family history. City Hall objects. ESPN absurdly breaks off meeting with Jonathan Smith. Abruptly and absurdly breaks off meeting with Jonathan Smith. Quote, coach, we're going to have to let you go. My producers are telling me that you're just too boring. Rude. But not the rudest thing we've heard from the media this week. Finally, upon learning that Connor Stallions broke into the shoe and burglarized playbooks, depth charts, and complimentary Gatorade, Wojo opines, quote, it's not all that uncommon. It didn't lead to any unfair advantages.
Did you see folks pulling up Wojo on Trestle?
Yeah. Here's the thing about Bob.
Yeah, no, yes.
No one takes Bob seriously. Why are we pretending that anyone takes Bob seriously?
And I think the thing that people need to realize about Bob is that exactly,
seriously.
Bob doesn't take Bob seriously. I think Bob would be more insulted, honestly, if you just told him he wasn't funny. Because I think he's a man who thinks he's funny. And Bob, if you're listening, you're not very funny. But I think that's what he prides himself on. But I don't think he takes himself very seriously.
There was a day, this is becoming a problem podcast. One of the days, one of the really
Did you open 11?
No, this is all still 23.
Okay.
In the like things are really happening with the Nasser stuff. There was a day when a big article was dropped by the Detroit News about what was going on, who knew what. It was like a deep dive on these things. It was like real journalism. It was a serious article.
So it wasn't by Tony Paul.
It was not by Tony Paul. It happened that I was in the range of 97 won the ticket, and I was interested in what people were talking about on the subject at the time. And Bob went on the air and he started talking about this article, but he had not bothered to read it. And he was just sort of like blubbering through it. And then they went to commercial, and I thought, surely now is the time. Bob will take a moment and he'll read through an article in his own newspaper, a serious article on a serious subject that people want him to talk about live and on the air, being broadcast out. We don't have the same reach that 97.1 has, as has been kind of halfway pointed out by the LSJ this week. And I thought, this is the time where a serious person on a probably one of your most serious days as a broadcast journalist, like, this is the call. This is the time. Came back from break. He still hadn't read it. He still bumbled through the next thing. And it was then that I was like, you are just the character, Bob. And I'm sure you're a fine guy to have a drink with. I actually probably wouldn't hate meeting you at, at a hotel bar after a football or a basketball game. We could probably share a couple barbs. You got some great stories, I'm sure, but like, you could be bothered to read a real article in your own newspaper before you went on the air to talk to tens of thousands of people about this article. It was like, I mean, honestly, it was part of why I was okay starting a podcast. Like, when we decided to start this podcast, that was one of the times that I thought about of like, I could be an idiot talking into a microphone. I'll at least read the thing. I had already read it by the time I was listening to 97.1 that day.
Yeah.
And that's who Bob is.
Yeah. This podcast, at least we read it. Usually. And if we haven't, we will own being an idiot talking into the microphone.
Well, sometimes we'll not own it. But anyway, so there we go. We took this opportunity, thank you, Raymond, to tee off on Wojo. Next up for Raymond.
Is he the news too?
He is the news, right? He's not the freak.
Yeah, no, you're right. He's news. So Tony Paul, and it's our favorite cast of characters over there. All right. Anyway, next up from Raymond. How is MSU recruiting compared to other lower level Big Ten programs? Compared to other troubled teams, does it seem to be making more or less progress? I think this is really tough, Kevin, because the last class that MSU brought in, so not our current class, but the one prior, they brought in, obviously, we've seen Jonathan Smith and co. able to take in some top-end talent. I think Rustin Young, who was an OSU commit, who flipped to us, is a 4-star. They haven't been here long enough, I think, to establish some of the connections required. Like, you look to next year, look to the year after that. I expect better things next year by a lot than what we've gotten this year. I'm just not holding them too much this year.
The problem is, this is supposed to be the year where you've got a lot to sell. You've got playtime. The sky's the limit. You're in the Power Four. And right now, MSU is your 15 ranked 24/7 2025 class MSU football or Big Ten
50th?
football team.
Well, 15th. Okay.
1-5. That is ahead of Northwestern, Purdue, and Illinois, where we belong. But it's behind Iowa, Minnesota, Indiana, UCLA, Maryland, Rutgers. I mean, Maryland and Rutgers are 7 and 8 right now. We need to be at least 5, 6, 7, 8. And right now we're 15. And that is a problem.
It is worth pointing out that the next couple few years coming down the Michigan football, high school football pike is a more talent-rich pool than has historically been in the state. But I don't disagree with you. I would have preferred a better year by a lot, but it's not what we have. And I don't hate any one of the recruits that this staff has picked up. And I do, they're at 15 recruits, right? 16 recruits right now, I think. And you expect the class to get to 21, 22 probably, right? Like, I mean, that's where an average pre-Mel Tucker, that's where normal was. So I think this back half of the recruiting season, right, is all based upon senior season tape. So you're not going to be more impressed, is my point. This is going to be
so to give some perspective on this. In 12, 13, 14, these were years where MSU took those classes, contended for big wins. They were they were fourth to fifth. They were like waffling around in there. Let's go back to 2011. Now that was in a different Big Ten, but it was behind the teams that you would expect, but still like in that next tier. 2011, they're all the way down to seventh, which is the first time that they break into the bottom half. So they were still top half. 2010, and this is all 24/7, by the way, that I'm looking at here. 2010, they were 4. So
they were fourth in 2010.
They're fourth, fifth at that time is about where we belonged. It was behind Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
What sometimes was first year?
That would have been 8, right? I think 8 was his first year. It definitely predates 24/7. That would have been rival scout time. But MSU's natural place in the Big Ten is far above being 15th. Like, the recruiting is a problem right now. There's no reason to be behind. If I look at the teams in front of us, Iowa fine, Nebraska fine, Wisconsin, but you can't be behind Minnesota, Indiana, UCLA. You can't be behind Maryland, Rutgers. Those are teams that we need to beat on the field, and thus we need to be ahead of them in the recruiting rankings as well. So
I will say, I'm looking, Kevin, I'm looking here, and MSU listed at 22nd in the 2010 rankings, but it appears that for 2009 they were 42nd.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's a notable data point, right? Like, that's year 2 of D'Antonio.
All right. Keep an eye on it. Raymond, great question. 2 great questions. We get to sound off on Mojo, and we get to talk about recruiting.
Let's wrap this up. Upper Deck Jerk.
You win the week. You win the week in Twitter questions. Finally, from the Upper Deck Jerk guy, what's the difference between Premier League and
La Liga?
Yeah.
One is in Mexico and one is in the UK. Otherwise,
and also, who, what, why?
Us. Graham Couch not giving credit. Why? He thinks he's better than us. It is what it is.
He's so mean.
He's so mean. The absolute worst. All right, Kevin, this has been an episode. And for that, buddy, we got one more week before kick. Go Green.
Go White.